to discover that the NYPD has, well, they may have been a little bit deceitful, you might say, about their investigations regarding cell phones. Now, I'm quite a proponent of the lack of police use of stingray devices without a warrant, anyway. You see, for some odd reason, police seem to think that they are above the law because they are the enforcers of the law. And this being the case, them being the benevolent enforcers of the law, they are beyond the law and can go beyond the law for purposes of enforcing the law. It makes no sense at all. So, New York police were caught lying over stingray use and spying without any court oversight. Now, the way it's supposed to work is a stingray device, of course, is a device which is used to spy on cell phones. It can go over locational information. It can also discover information about what phone calls you've been making, different text messages, all that sort of thing. So stingray devices are incredibly powerful devices. They operate on the GSM band, and they have a SIM card just like any other cell phone would. And we actually don't know a whole lot of details about the hardware. They're made by the Harris Corporation. We know that much. And they're distributed out to different police agencies under contract. And that's basically as far as it goes, actually, as far as how much we know about them. So in the wake of the Edward Snowden leaks of nearly 2 years ago, the NSA, the FBI, and even local police have hammered a consistent drumbeat of trust. Time and time again, at every level of government, local to national, elected officials and appointed commissioners have promised that the cutting-edge tools of mass surveillance used to hoover your personal information are actually tightly controlled and used only under appropriate conditions. Unfortunately, available evidence continues to blow holes in this narrative, most recently in NYC. Or rather, New York State in this particular case, in Erie County. Now, you see, the police are not above the law. The police should be held to a higher standard and should be held to much higher scrutiny than your average everyday Joe walking down the street. Because your average everyday Joe walking down the street doesn't have any form of obligation legally. I don't have any obligation legally when I'm walking down the street. I don't have to present myself in a certain manner. I don't have to act any certain way. Really, all I have to do is not break the law, and I'll kind of be okay. Sort of. You see, most people do commit lots and lots of crimes every day. They just don't realize that they've done it. I know I've committed tons of crimes. I've just never been caught. So it's really a matter of just being caught when it comes right down to it. So for your average citizen, your average resident of the state of Tennessee, the state of Georgia, the United States of America, really all it's up to us to do is to just not get caught committing a crime, and we'll be A-okay. We don't really have any sort of obligation legally. We don't have to present ID when asked if not operating a motor vehicle. We don't have to identify ourselves in any sort of way other than, unless you're driving a motor vehicle or you've been detained in some way. You just don't have to. In fact, to ensure that I'm not identified when I'm walking down the street, I just don't carry ID. I just don't. So I keep my ID in my car. So if it's necessary, like I keep it in my wallet when I'm not in my car. But if I'm driving my car and I know that I'm going to be driving that car, then I'll put my driver's license in the glove box of my car. And then if I get out, I keep my driver's license in the glove box of my car. So really the only time I would ever need to have that driver's license is for purposes of identification. Some people will argue that it is, in fact, illegal for you to not have a form of ID. There's some rough spots regarding that law. In Tennessee, I don't believe you do. Again, I'm not a lawyer. In Georgia, you don't unless you're being suspected of committing a crime, in which case you do have to identify yourself. But again, if you don't operate a motor vehicle anyway, it's kind of hard for you to identify yourself. So you sort of have people who are stuck in a sticky situation where, let's say, I don't have a car and I can't drive a car, so I don't have a driver's license and I don't have any form of ID. I don't have a social security number. Let's just assume I don't have that either. I don't have a library card. I don't have anything with my signature on it. I don't even have a bank card. But okay, maybe I'm homeless. Who knows? And so a policeman stops me for walking close to a business which was recently robbed and asks me what I'm doing. And I say, well, I don't answer any questions. Sorry. And so he then stops me and says, okay, well, let me see some ID to make sure you are who you say you are. And I say, I don't have any ID. There's nothing I can help you with here. I actually do not have any ID. So that's sort of a sticky situation. Now, they'll probably think that you're lying and try to get your identification off of you anyway. but they'll not be pleased to discover that I have no identification whatsoever. You see, I have no obligation to identify myself. I have no duty to the state whatsoever. I do not owe them anything. They owe me quite a lot because I pay them money sometimes. They actually owe me. I don't owe them. So it's very obnoxious when you hear people say, "Well, you have to do your fair share, got to do your duty towards the state." I don't have any duty towards the state. I owe them nothing. They work for me. Well, the Erie County Police Department has now acknowledged that it has used a Stingray device 47 times. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but 47 times your rights have been violated. Now it starts to sound kind of out there. Well, they only sought actual permission to deploy the device once. And even in that single case, the police department represented or misrepresented the nature of the hardware, claiming that stingrays cannot be used to intercept calls and text messages, when that's definitely not true. In that case, the police only sought a court order, not a warrant, despite the fact that the capabilities of a stingray most likely justify a warrant as the most appropriate form of permission. The Erie County Police Department has been caught lying in public. Sheriff Hall previously told lawmakers and reporters that stingrays and similar devices were only used under judicial review, even when it's been shown and, in fact, proven that that is not the case. So, my recommendation to the Erie County Police Department would be to, frankly, to fire all the people involved in justifying the use of these stingray devices without the use of a warrant, because obviously these people do not respect the rights of Americans and should not be on the job. Simple as that. If you are a policeman, it's kind of necessary for you to know the law to enforce the law. So if you don't know the law, you'll just start making up laws and saying it's illegal for you to do things which are actually totally legal. This has now been proven demonstrably false, and it's not even the worst disclosure. A comprehensive, non-redacted agreement between the FBI, the Harris Corporation, which is the company that builds these devices, and the Erie County Police Department has also been released. This agreement explicitly requires that the Erie County PD make every effort to hide, obfuscate, and avoid any attempt to require disclosure of how this technology operates to the public, the courts, or in response to a Freedom of Information Act. The document states that in order to ensure that such wireless collection equipment/technology continues to be available for use by law enforcement community, the equipment/technology and any information related to its functions, operation, and use shall be protected from potential compromise by precluding disclosure of this information to the public in any matter, including but not limited to in press releases, in court documents, during judicial hearings, or during other public forums or proceedings. Emphasis added by the writers over at Extreme Tech. So they have to do their best. They're contractually obligated to do their best to stop these people from finding out about the stingray devices. These people being us, us people, from finding out about the stingray device and their usage thereof. So ridiculous end user license agreements or terms of service agreements are nothing new to the computer industry. Obviously, we're very, very familiar with those. But one common line of thinking when it comes to such documents, particularly those that assert the company is allowed to engage in unlawful behavior, is that the agreement is not enforceable. It's just legal boilerplate. This kind of joint agreement shows how dangerous that thinking is. So they really do not have any legal power in this regard, where they say that, because you signed this end user licensing agreement, you cannot disclose any information about these stingray devices, despite the fact that they legally are obligated to disclose these stingray devices if a Freedom of Information Act request is being filed, because the information pertaining to that stingray device is not pertaining to any form of active investigation. Thus, they have to disclose that a stingray device is being used. But for some odd reason, they really, really don't like to do that. So we have police agencies which can't be trusted. But then again, we kind of knew that. We have police departments which simply can't be trusted to actually enforce the law in a proper manner and to actually be peace officers. We have policemen who can't be trusted with our information. We cannot trust the police with our information. Who knows what they'll do with it? We're talking about blanket sweeping up of cell phone information. And there's very intimate information on cell phones. The very terms of agreement to make it possible, or rather impossible, for any legal department to bring this before the judge. So the very terms of this agreement make it impossible for any legal department to bring up any form of anything about Stingray devices for a judge. Now, that's illegal. That's perjury. That's lying to a court. Elsewhere in the document, the FBI mandates that it be informed about any attempt to compel the release or information of documentation in order to preserve the supreme secrecy of the device. All of this is done under the auspices of national security, of course, which means that no judge, save for the rubber stamp FISA court, can credibly be said to have grappled with the true technical capabilities of the Stingrays. And even then, the National FISA Court isn't particularly interested in the best interests of the people. They're more interested in the best interests of the agencies who govern the people. And even then, I don't really accept their governance. You see, we live in a lawless society now. People don't really realize that because the people who are in power are totally lawless. They don't recognize any laws because they just make up laws wherever they want. They're not bound by anything. They claim that they are going to follow the law to the best of their ability and yada yada, despite the fact that they will actively attempt and do their best to break the law when it comes to any form of disclosure. The police are not on our side in Erie County, and that's really of no surprise. The police departments do not act in the best interests of the people when it comes to Stingray devices. Never have, most likely never will. The really killer claim, though, is on page 3 of the disclosure that says, in addition, the Erie County Sheriff's Office will, at the request of the FBI, seek dismissal of the case in lieu of using or providing or allowing others to use or provide any information concerning the Harris Corporation's wireless collection equipment technology, its associated software, operating manuals, and any related documentation. So if the Erie County PD can't actually influence whether a case is brought to trial, the FBI further stipulates it is the FBI's expectation that the law enforcement agency identify the applicable prosecuting agency or agencies for inclusion in this agreement. So they really, really, really do not want you to know that Stingray devices are being used. That being the case, I want you to know that Stingrays are being used. You see, these devices are being used against us. They're being used against just regular people who are not committing any crimes and probably don't even have anything to hide, but that's not really the point. I keep hearing that argument, well, I have nothing to hide, so yeah, you can search my car, and then before you know it, there's crack that's been planted in your car, and you're being hauled off to jail for possession. You see, there are quotas to be met. There's a machine that has to be oiled, and it's oiled with cash. That's the problem here. And I know that sounds very edgy and teenagerish, but that actually kind of is the case. You see, the police do not act in our best interests. That's just how it's always going to be so long as they exist. They can't possibly act in our best interests when there's money interests in mind, because money is going to trump the interests of the people. That's just a simple fact of how these things go. That's just what happens when you're overrun by bureaucracy. Well, consider the implications of this, the Extreme Tech writer points out. The FBI is reserving for itself the right to kill a case brought by local authorities in and of itself. This is far from unheard of, but is performing that task in the service on behalf of the Harris Corporation, purportedly to protect national security interests. So the FBI is actively acting in the interest of a corporation. The question of protecting the civil rights of the accused or guaranteeing due process of law are not addressed in the document disclosure. Only a single sentence establishes that the Erie County PD is required to operate the device in accordance with federal law. And even then, they probably don't even do that. So Stingray devices are something which must be brought to the attention of the people. Stingray devices are something which are being used against the people. It's a weapon. It's a informational weapon that's being used against the people. It's sort of it really is a situation of us versus them, but it's informational. Now, because we have this very blanket oppression, should we let this change our everyday lives? Well, for your average everyday person, no, this shouldn't change how you operate. Should you say that, well, I'm not going to make any phone calls at the mall because I know that my phone is being spied on. Regardless of whether or not there's a Stingray device present, your phone is going to be spied on. That's just the nature of the device. If you have a cell phone on you, it is going to be spied on. That's just how they work. So there's not really any getting around that. Now, unless you're being targeted, that's really not actually anything to be worried about for you personally. See, if you're not being actively targeted as a person of interest and a potential threat to national security or potential domestic terrorist or whatever, then chances are your physical phone calls, or not physical, but your actual phone calls are not going to be listened to. Well, this is great for the average person because now this means that, well, I don't have to worry because I'm not any sort of domestic terrorist. I don't really have radical political beliefs. I'm going to be okay. So this is very good news for your average person. The problem is still that this information is being swept up, regardless of whether or not it's being read. This information is being brought into some huge database, regardless of whether or not some guy at the NSA is reading your phone calls or not is kind of irrelevant. The fact of the matter is this information is being swept up into some huge database out in the fields of the deserts of Utah in some underground facility that's being cooled by liquid nitrogen or liquid oxygen. That's very unfortunate, and it's also the case with journalists who are probably targeted even more so. As a journalist, I guess I could classify myself as a journalist. Even as a journalist, that means I'm going to fall under some extra scrutiny because, not to toot my own horn, but because the fact of the matter is people listen. People tend to read things which journalists write. People tend to listen to things which journalists say and videos which journalists produce. It's just comes with the territory. That's just part of the job. That doesn't make me special in any regard. That's just the nature of my occupation. That being the case, of course, I'm going to be called under some extra scrutiny. Not as much as some writer for the New York Times or an anchor for Fox News or a reporter for CBS, which I actually kind of am, but it's not like I'm going to be some high person of interest in some database somewhere out in wherever the Quantico. There we go. Out in Quantico, Virginia. The name escaped me. So out in Quantico, Virginia, there's probably not some FBI agent looking at my profile and seeing what I post on Facebook and looking at my Twitter feed and seeing how I troll neocons on Twitter and that sort of thing. They probably don't actually care. Now, if I were to cause some sort of rally in Chattanooga where I gathered a bunch of people together and said, hey, we're going to protest the use of stingray devices by the police, then I might be under some surveillance at that point. I know I have been called into some scrutiny by the FBI. I don't really want to talk about how I know that, but I do know that for certain. Just trust me on that. I've had some dealings. They have been looking at me. Now, I don't really let that scare me. I don't let that stop me from saying what I'm going to say because, frankly, I have a right to say what I want to say under the First Amendment. And so do you. Now, they can claim all day that you don't have a right to say anything negative about the establishment, whatever that may be. You don't have any right to say anything about the status quo because that's a threat to national security. No matter what law enforcement says, you do have a right to say what you want to say. You see, the Constitution, I'm holding a copy of the Constitution in my hand right now, does not grant you anything. This Constitution means nothing other than the fact that the government recognizes the different amendments held therein. This doesn't grant you anything. You have the rights in the Constitution already. The president could walk down to the Library of Congress. He could walk out to the rotunda and he could pick up the Constitution, set it on fire, and say the United States government does not recognize the United States Constitution as law anymore. What would that change in regards to your rights in this country? Absolutely nothing. You still have all the same rights just as they're written here in the Constitution. Because of common law and because of biblical law, you have these rights because they've been granted to you by God, not by the Founding Fathers. You see, the Founding Fathers, as cool as some of them may have been, they didn't have any sort of special mystical power which granted you the right to free speech. These rights obviously existed before the writing of the Constitution, and these people recognized these rights and said these rights need to be further recognized by the new established government here in these United Colonies, which are now the United States, which are America. So these rights existed far before the writing of the Constitution. You see, the Constitution grants you no rights. It just recognizes rights which you already have and says the government cannot infringe these, or rather, shall not. It doesn't say cannot, because they will. They recognize that they will. That was kind of the entire point. The Constitution was designed to give you or grant you the recognized power in this government to fight the government when they tried to take rights away from you, which is actually them trying to cease to recognize rights which you already have. See, Constitution doesn't really help you out any unless you're making some form of legal argument. What it does help you out with is the legal argument. What it doesn't help you out with is the natural order of things, which is that you do have the right to free speech, no matter what a cop tells you, no matter what a senator tells you, no matter what Dianne Feinstein tells you or the president tells you. You do have your rights always.
This is a mob world. This is the modern world. What kind of fool do you think I am? To think I know nothing of myself.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway, near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
NASCAR, Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Toulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
Hot News Talk Radio, 910, 1190, and 1240 AM.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240. Hot News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. He's accused of trying to provide support to ISIS. Joshua Van Haften of Madison, Wisconsin, picked up in Chicago after returning from Turkey.
No word on why he wasn't picked up before he left the U.S. back in August. Van Haften, who's also a convicted sex offender, is due in federal court today. Around the same time, Philadelphia woman and accused terror sympathizer Kiana Thomas is also due in court.
Fox Radio's Jeff Manasso. Areas stretching from the Midwest into the South, bracing for severe storms.
From Illinois and Indiana and southwest lower Michigan back down across the mid-Mississippi Valley and mid-South and then into Arkansas and parts of northeast Texas.
Roger Edwards of the National Weather Service. Make sure you wash all of your cars. Safety officials blame brake fluid leaks from rusty pipes in some GM vehicles on road salt and say drivers should get the underside of their cars washed and have brake lines checked. Fox News, we report, you decide.
When it comes to healthcare, we can't really expect the feds to save us because they have so much on their plate. After all, the feds are here to protect us, right? Oh, wait, no, they're not. Well, the feds are here to enforce taxes, I guess. So they're busy enforcing taxes, and they really don't have time for healthcare. Who does have time for healthcare, however, are people who are interested in making money off of healthcare. Now, there's quite a lot of money to be made off of healthcare, actually. So venture capital is actually trying to help out the healthcare system, according to TechCrunch. So venture capitalists are on a mission to heal the ailing U.S. healthcare system, and big data may just be the right prescription. Now, big data is sort of a weird buzz phrase you keep hearing that basically refers to massive data collection on the side of corporations, which are done to index people and their buying habits and that sort of thing. Google does it, Yahoo does it, Microsoft does it. You can't really escape big data. Healthcare costs in the US have gone up over 130% just in the last decade, and healthcare is currently 18% of the GDP. That's the gross domestic product. Since large insurance companies have a few incentives aligning their interests with consumers, costs have continued to rise while user experience definitely hasn't improved. Now, I know quite a few people who work in the healthcare industry, and they would be very happy to tell you that the healthcare system is pretty whacked. When you buy health insurance off the shelf, it's kind of a one-size-fits-all type deal. There's not much guidance in terms of care and budgeting, and the online experience is much out of the 90s, says Scott Rainey of Redpoint, who recently participated in Collective Health Series A. I've noticed that too, where a lot of things which are under heavy regulation are always way, way behind in their execution. They're always very outdated. Like the DMV's website, you'll notice, looks so 90s. I'm surprised it doesn't have spinning skull gifs and that blue ribbon that says "Stop Online Censorship," and asking you to please check out Joe's GeoCities fan site for Lincoln Park. It's so late 90s, it hurts. Well, investors have backed 55 startups since 2011 in an effort to bring the health insurance market up to speed with current consumer expectation, and lately they're picking up the pace. In 2014, health insurance companies raised $308 million across 32 venture rounds, according to Crunchbase data, a 250% increase from the $88 million raised in 2013, and a 556% increase from 2012's total. Founders Fund and NEA are among a growing list of firms which have closed multiple deals in this space. And Oscar, the new age health insurance provider that's already one of the New York's top funded startups, is reportedly in talks to raise even more at $1 billion. So these brand new companies are just popping up, which are looking to protect us, perhaps, which are looking to offer a better user experience for healthcare. I'm noticing that too, where we have such massive problems regarding, say, the internet, where the internet really isn't being run perhaps the way some people think it should. So the solution is to just run the internet the way you think it should be run on your own website. And if it's popular, then people will follow suit. So it's not actually that difficult to change the way we think about things, so long as you can pull enough influence, and you really don't need to be a major player to do that. If we could change the way we think of so many different things, then probably a lot of things would be a lot better. Now, that's a very, very blanket statement, I know. But think about how YouTube was started up by people who didn't have a whole lot of money. And Facebook was started up by a guy who really didn't have a whole lot of money in terms of when you think about a huge business starting up. And now it's one of the biggest IPOs in the world. It's crazy to think about how just some guys in a basement have really changed the world. Think about that. We have YouTube, right, which was purchased by Google. And Google, think about Google, started up by some college kids in their dorm. That was Google. It was just a little server rack that looked really janky, set up in their dormitory by some guys who decided that they wanted to search the internet and index websites which were on the internet. That was it. That was Google. That was 1998. And here we are nearly 20 years later, and it's changed into such a huge, huge industry. Search engines are now something that we take so for granted, but it was started up by just some guys. So it seems like the best businesses are started up by just some guys. I'll give you an even better example is Apple. Back in the 70s, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started up in their garage and just said, hey, man, we can make computers too. And they decided to make a computer that was more consumer friendly than what IBM was offering at the time. And it worked. And Apple Computer Company has outlived one of its founders now. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but that just is a testament to the power of the company that was founded by these two guys, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. It's crazy how these companies can be really formed out of nearly nothing other than intuition, huge amounts of smarts, and creativity. And there you go. If people want it, they'll buy it. It got to the point where Steve Jobs and Wozniak, they were selling more than they even had with the Apple Ones. Watch parts of the Silicon Valley. You'll get an idea for how these startup companies worked back then. It was rough and tumble, man. Startup companies were way different back then than they are now because you didn't have an internet to publicize them. It really had to be hobbyist journals, hobbyist magazines, and word of mouth. And that was how you built a company. That's how you built a multi-million-dollar company. Unless you got recognition from some larger corporation and got bought out, you really had no chance back then, unless you were so popular that it was just selling like hotcakes, which is what happened with Apple Computer Company. Now, Google, the folks at Google may have had it a little bit easier because they did have the internet to help publicize. And I think actually most of their publication or publicity was done on the internet. It's crazy how the internet has totally shifted everything about our lives, whether you use it or not. That's the weird thing too. You don't even have to use the internet to be impacted by it. That's how far it's gone, where the internet is just this entity which exists free of borders. There's no nation which can claim ownership of the internet. That it just is this permeating force that allows for everyday life to continue as normal, as necessary. We need connections between, say, airports for better communications, which is done so that you have a seamless experience from one airport to the next. There's internet connections between different government agencies to ensure that there's a seamless experience from the DMV in Tennessee and the DMV in Georgia. Now, that may be a poor example, but there's the internet which ensures that one store over here makes sure that it's stocked up on the products you need, so that there's not some guy in a back office having to keep making phone calls saying, hey, you know, we're kind of low on such and such. We're low on bananas over here. We need another shipment. And we don't need that now because we have the internet. It's insane how many things have been changed. Cars now are going to be changed by interconnectivity thanks to the internet. The Internet of Things is going to change how our homes are run. It's going to make our homes much more efficient, potentially. Now, there's a lot of people who are afraid of the Internet of Things, saying that it's going to be the Mark of the Beast 2.0 because the RFID chips didn't really cut it yet. So we need a new Mark of the Beast, and it's going to be the Internet of Things. Well, the Internet of Things is interconnectivity between devices, which are all, you know, interconnected to ensure that you have a very nice experience when you're in your kitchen, so that your fridge can sense if your eggs are spoiled and will tell you to go buy new ones. You see, that's the Internet of Things. And your toaster will amalgamate all the different average toast times for toast and go by that for the toasting of your toast, so you have perfectly toasted toast. That's the Internet of Things. And this can extend to cars, which your cars will automatically sense from national readings or DMV readings or Department of Transportation readings whether or not there's been a wreck on I-75. And if there has been, it'll divert your route or not manufacture, but recommend that you go on a back road instead of on one of the main roads. So that's the Internet of Things. It's not some huge machine, some terrifying monster that's going to steal away our privacy. It's just an idea of interconnected machines, which is actually exactly what the internet is anyway. Well, regarding healthcare, driving this funding frenzy for different healthcare startups is the influx of machine-readable data made available by the Affordable Care Act, oddly enough, back in March of 2010. Now, you wouldn't expect the Affordable Care Act to have solved much of anything. There's a lot of naysayers about the Affordable Care Act, but if there is any positive thing that came out of it, it is that it made people think about healthcare and how it's run, younger people. So, at its core, the Affordable Healthcare Act, or Affordable Care Act, I should say, mandated and lowered the price of healthcare coverage for Americans. But for regulatory purposes, it converted all healthcare plans from free-form text into a machine-readable format. So kind of like a barcode. People are afraid now of barcodes too, or were in the 70s, saying that barcodes were the mark of the beast. I think it's every 10 years or so we figure out what the next mark of the beast is. It's kind of funny, actually. Well, the data that's out there now is making it easier for organizations to personalize and optimize healthcare, but it's also pushing more of these decisions downstream, says Rick Yang at NEA. A lot of these higher deductible plans require consumers to take a lot more responsibility, and you really have to be able to understand the data behind it, Yang says. See, we live in an age where I'm terrified of breaking my arm because there's no way I could afford to go to the doctor to get that fixed. I'm terrified of getting in a car wreck for many reasons, but also because if I got in a car wreck, I couldn't afford to fix all that stuff, man. I have broken ribs, a broken up face. I'd had plastic surgery. I need to have pins, all this stuff. I couldn't possibly afford any of that. However, if these new tech startups who are also working in healthcare have their way, then we may have auto docks on every corner where there's just a bed you lie in and it fixes you up like in some crazy video game. And that's kind of what we're moving towards, is because healthcare is something which everyone was going to need at some point. Nobody's indestructible. Healthcare is a necessity for everyone. However, the solution is not government help. The solution is actually companies who have user experience in mind and not some form of regulatory influence saying that we need more regulation over healthcare to ensure that everything runs seamlessly from state to state and all that sort of thing. When you think of a protest, you probably think of angry people and you think of police. Those are the two main players in protests. But think deeper about it. What's another thing which is almost always present at a riot? Not a riot, but a protest of some form. That's right, tear gas, obviously, because the police have to protect themselves because, they fear for their lives. So they need tear gas to choke you and hurt your eyes and ensure that you don't become violent, which seems a little bit weird because I'm going to be aggressive to ensure you don't become violent. Well, Indiana police will start using, or rather, not Indiana, Indian, as in the country of India. Indian police are going to start pepper spraying with drones to control unruly crowds of protesters. Officials describe the drones as non-lethal but very effective method of mob control. Now, I'm not sure what they're expecting in India that will require some form of new protection against mobs, but, I don't know. But this new form of drone could lead to quite a few problems. You see, drones can be flown around by just about anybody. It's not really hard to fly a drone. So I'm a huge proponent of officer accountability when it comes to the police, because I don't believe that the police should be able to do much of anything without some form of scrutiny. Well, if these drones are being used by law enforcement to drop pepper spray on people, one, there's sort of a machine disconnect, which naturally happens when you're operating an automated machine where you don't really have that human connection, where you're not personally pulling the trigger, so you feel a lesser responsibility for the actions which are taken by this machine, because after all, it's just a machine. So this raises the likelihood that these machines will be used in an overzealous manner. Now, possibility should not equate to ban, obviously, but there's a time and a place for the usage of these drones, and it makes you wonder, do the police really need millions of dollars of funding to get these special drones to ensure that they're never put in any danger? The results of the tests of the drone were brilliant, according to Lucknow Police Chief Yashasvi Yadav. I knew I'd get it eventually. We have managed to work out how to use it precisely to target the mobs in winds and congested areas. Pepper is non-lethal, obviously, but very effective in mob control. We can spray from different heights to have maximum results. Well, I actually don't know if you could blanketly say that pepper spray is non-lethal, because what if I have a very severe form of asthma and I sort of take caution to the wind and decide that, well, I'm very upset about whatever cause this is, which is being protested. So I'm going to go to this protest and sort of fight for my right, I suppose, to party or whatever. Thanks, Beastie Boys. And I get pepper sprayed. And now I'm having a horrible asthma attack, and I've fallen on the ground, and I'm choking, and I'm dying, and I'm also being handcuffed and thrown into a police car, and I die of asthma attack in the back of a police cruiser. So you can't blanketly say that pepper spray is non-lethal, but on an average it is. And I know that's a very big theoretical situation, but I thought it might be a little bit necessary to point out that drones may be used very quickly here in the States for the usage of pepper spray. Well, again, more news about the police, where the cop in South Carolina has now been charged with murder after video has shown him shooting a fleeing suspect. And there's also video which purportedly shows him planting a taser on the very warm body of the person who was slain. A South Carolina police officer was fired Wednesday after being charged with murder in connection to the videotaped shooting of a man fired upon 8 times in the back as he fled. Michael Slaughter, 33, was accused Tuesday of killing Walter Scott, who was 50 years old, following a traffic stop for an allegedly broken taillight. Scott, who had a warrant out for his arrest, fled the Mercedes-Benz he was driving. He was chased into a field, and the officer said that he fired his taser after a brief struggle, police said. Shots fired and subject is down. He took my taser, the officer reported into his police radio. All the while, an unidentified onlooker secretly began filming the incident Saturday night or rather Saturday, right after the struggle had begun. The brief video shows the victim fleeing and the officer firing his weapon 8 times. It was turned over to the authorities and has been uploaded to YouTube by many, many people. There's fortunately no getting rid of this video. Where would we be without the video, said Justin Bamberg, a Scott family attorney. The video, which shows not really noteworthy that the officer is white, but they point out a white officer shooting a black man, is the latest to get a police officer in trouble. A New York Police Department officer, for example, was accused in February of stomping the head of a suspect after an onlooker recorded a Brooklyn arrest. In the latest incident, North Charleston Mayor Keith Summey told a news conference that the officer made a bad decision and will be charged with murder. In the wake of the shooting, the mayor said he has ordered body cams for all the department's officers. So I can't really fault the not the police mayor, but the North Charleston mayor, Mr. Summey, for his quick call to action regarding this. But it might be too little too late at this point, because we have an ongoing trend of really 2 things. One ongoing trend that keeps sort of spiking. Imagine this trend is a stock, right? And you see a graph, and this stock is going up and up and up with no signs of crashing. A stock which is distrust of the police. Most people nowadays are starting to think maybe the police don't have my best interests in mind. And we're starting to see that consistently, even with the older crowd, who tend to actually trust the police more often than not because they grew up with the friendlier peace officers, not with the battle armor clad APC driving whatever paramilitary guys who call themselves law enforcement officers nowadays. Those are the guys I grew up with. Maybe you grew up with Andy Griffith, but it's a different time now. I grew up in the 2000s, so I'm more used to the post 9/11 cop than the Andy Griffith sort of cop. Well, there's also another trend, which is police aggression. We're seeing this more and more. Now, does this mean that police aggression is spiking, or does it mean that we're filming it more? I don't actually know, but it seems that the video, the invention of the cell phone camera has really helped us out here, where previously this would have just been another case of, well, he ran and he got shot after a brief altercation. You know, the police officer probably did the right thing. Maybe he acted a little bit overzealously, but he did fear for his life, and it's understandable, would be the common consensus. But with the video, we see that that may not actually be true. Now, video is a unbiased account of what has happened, unless it's been heavily altered with CGI and Adobe After Effects and Premiere and all these sorts of Avid computers which are used to edit video. But that's usually not the case with cell phone video. Now we have an unbiased account of what truly happened when this man was slain. Now, that's not, when I use the word slain, I don't use that to say, well, he obviously murdered him. No, slain is just that's just what happened. A person was slain. A person died. That's what happened. We can confirm that via the autopsy reports. Well, before the video surfaced, the man's attorney, David Ayler, said in a statement that Slaughter felt threatened and reached for his department-issued firearm and fired said firearm. Ayler added, "This is a very tragic event for all the families. I believe once the community hears all the facts of the shooting, they'll have a better understanding of the circumstances surrounding this investigation." Aw. Well, they do have a better understanding, just not the way Mr. Ayler hoped. The Supreme Court ruled in 1985 that deadly force may not be used unless it is necessary to prevent the escape and the officer has probable cause to believe that the suspect poses a significant threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or to others. Before the video became public, the police had a different story, of course. After speaking to North Charleston Police spokesman Spencer Pryor, a local media outlet reported that a man ran on foot from the traffic stop and an officer deployed his department-issued taser in an attempt to stop him. That did not work, police said. An altercation ensued as the men struggled over the device. Police alleged that during the struggle, the man gained control of the taser and attempted to use it against the officer. The officer then resorted to his service weapon and shot him. However, the video doesn't really line up with that series of events. Now, a court trial, of course, is in order because he has been charged with murder, and whatever the verdict is going to determine how the public is going to see this man from henceforth and forevermore. So until then, we can't say unequivocally that he's a murderer or that he's an innocent person. The trial is going to determine that. But it is very significant and very important that there's a video of this event. Now, it's interesting how some police agencies are a little bit upset that films are being taken, not films, pardon me, I'm using older vernacular, that video files are being taken of these events, because accountability for some odd reason doesn't seem to be the number one prerogative for a lot of police agencies, who would rather they're able to enforce the law without distraction. Well, unfortunately, they actually kind of work for us because, like it or not, we do pay sales tax. If we don't pay the other taxes, most of the time we pay sales tax and gas taxes because those are kind of unavoidable. And we end up paying their salaries one form or another. So they kind of work for us, not the other way around. They should be given, we should be given certain graces, and not the other way around. And that's not to say you should be rude to every policeman because he's out there to oppress you, but extra scrutiny is definitely in order to ensure that a rather overzealous shooting doesn't occur. And I think it would be noteworthy of the best interests of the police officer to assume that there's always a camera trained on him. Now, I think it is a good thing that these body cams are being deployed by the mayor's office or are being ordered by the mayor for use by the police officers, but that seems to be sort of a band-aid on a very severely leaking dam. The leaking dam, of course, being police brutality. This is just a bandage on the dam, which is due to break any time now. Soon, total loss in faith of police efficiency will happen. And I don't view that as a bad thing because, frankly, it should have happened a long time ago, where the police are acting not in the best interests of the people, but in the best interests of themselves and sometimes the Harris Corporation. Well, this is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. The show we talk about technology and more. Nuganomics.com with David Toulis is coming up in just a few seconds right here on Hot News Talk Radio. It's the show where he talks about local economy and the free market. And you can listen to us on our website, hotnewstalkradio.com. Get the TuneIn app and search for Hot News Talk Radio, and you'll be able to listen to us on your smartphone on the TuneIn app anywhere in the world. That's the TuneIn app, and then search for Hot News Talk Radio 1240 WSTT. And our Twitter, of course, is Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. You do not have to be living with constant pain. You need to make the choice today to enjoy a revitalized body. You deserve to live a better pain-free life. And Dr. Ross can help. At Ross Chiropractic, failure is not an option. For over 40 years, Dr. Ross, a graduate of the prestigious Palmer College of Chiropractic, prided himself in helping and healing. The Ross method of chiropractic care is unique in developing a treatment designed just for you. And Ross Chiropractic makes this promise to you. If he believes that he can help relieve your pain, he will guide you to another health practitioner to assist you. Feel better now. You owe it to yourself. You really do. Call Dr. Ross now at 954-9591. That's 954-9591. And visit Dr. Ross at 7405 Shaliford Road, Suite 320. Ross Chiropractic, helping your body heal itself. Because when your spine's in line, you will feel fine. Call 954-9591. That's 954-9591 for Ross Chiropractic.
Every Tuesday at 11 a.m. on Hot News Talk Radio, join Real Estate U for an hour of information, guests, and new ideas about the dynamic Chattanooga real estate investment market. Real Estate U every Tuesday at 11 a.m. here on Hot News Talk Radio.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon in Northgate Mall next to Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life.
Pure, honest, fair, and respect. Just some words that come to mind when you think about how you want to be treated. And that's how you're treated at Rivermont Pure. Rivermont Pure in Rivermont, Chattanooga. Serving your vehicle needs for over 30 years.
Now that's a long time.
Owner-operators Charlie and Tommy always put your needs first. Yeah, go ahead. Get an estimate from one of those big guy impersonal car repair chains.
No way!
Then bring it to Tommy and Charlie at Rivermont Pure. Chances are they'll beat their price and get your vehicle back on the road faster than you can say,
Our customers come first. Hi, this is Charlie.
And I'm Tommy, owners of Rivermont Pure. We're here to serve you.
Rivermont Pure, the auto repair guys. Featuring ethanol-free fuel. Located across from Rivermont Elementary on Hickson Pike. Rivermont, Chattanooga. Rivermont Pure.
Rivermont Pure, that's where I've always gone to get my car serviced. My husband and I trust Charlie and Tommy. They always treat us right and give us a fair price. And they get the job done right the first time. Thank you, Rivermont Pure.
Call 485-3375. That's 485-3375.
NASCAR. Laura